do hereby our speaking the whole truth, nothing but the truth.
Thank you very much. Now, we may proceed with the presentation of the 2020. I'll now hand over the mic to the chairperson of the board.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon.
If I may remind, we need the executive summary just to save time. Thank you.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. What we have prepared ourselves in this following manner, that I, as the chairperson, I'll make a small statement, a short statement, followed by the acting Commissioner General, the Deputy Commissioner General of GRA. I'll present the activity report, and then the Director of Finance and Accounting will present the accounts. So in that order, I hope you agree and I can proceed.
That's welcome.
Thank you. Honorable Chairperson of Fpac, members of the Fpac committee, the GRA management here, representative of GRA external auditors here present, representative of GPPA, I don't see any, subject matter specialists here present, members of the press, I don't see them, and other protocols duly observed and respectfully observed. Good afternoon to you all. Honorable Chairperson, I would like to begin my statement by stating that one of the core mandate of GRA as a revenue collecting agency is to promptly assess, collect, and account for all revenues due to government in a fair and transparent manner according to the revenue laws. However, this is a complex matter and our cultural setting in that many see non-compliance towards their tax obligation as normal. In such an environment, then, the enforcement of the revenue laws becomes a daily occurrence, which in itself is both challenging and resource intensive. Honorable Chair and members of the Fpac, we can therefore all appreciate the magnitude of the task assigned to the Gambia Revenue Authority as the main revenue collecting body of government. Honorable Chair, the GRA, having been operating as a single revenue administration since 2007, continue to account for the most of government recurrent budget on the annual basis. The average annual revenue growth for the period 2007 to 2020 stood at 11%. This feat in revenue mobilization has given government greater leverage in driving its development agenda forward. To further strengthen the gains in revenue mobilization and administration, the GRA has continued to implement international best practice in revenue administration, as well as honor regional and international protocols under ECOWAS, World Customs Organization, Africa Continental Free Trade Area, Africa Union, African Tax Administrations Forum, ATAF, and World Trade Organizations such as Trade Facilitation Agreement, among others. Furthermore, GRA started the implementation of its fourth corporate strategic plan 2020-2024, which aimed to deepen the gains already registered in operational efficiency through the use of ICT, human capital development, infrastructure improvements, and tackling perennial non-compliance. Towards this end, we solicit the full support of National Assembly for increased resource allocation and timely approval of revenue legislation. Honorable Chairperson and members of the Fpac, despite the upward trend in mobilization of revenues for government, some daunting operational and compliance challenges are still persisting despite the continuous efforts of GRA management. One of the most impactful challenges has been that of COVID-19 health pandemic, which disrupted the global supply chain, crippled economies, and destroyed many businesses, thereby affecting the capacity of GRA to mobilize the needed revenues. The other challenges lies with taxing the digital economy and creating conducive work environment for staff. We have seen, particularly during the COVID-19 pandemic era, the sprouting of many online businesses in the Gambia and globally who are generally not registered, have no physical address, but buying and selling goods and services online, but not under the radar of the tax administration. To address this new phenomena, there is need to modernize both the revenue laws, build staff capacity, and improve the revenue collecting systems. In this drive, therefore, the authority will count on the support of this august body in updating its revenue laws and increasing resource allocation to improve systems, enhance staff competences, and improve work environment for staff. In conclusion, Honorable Chairperson, I'd like to end my statement by encouraging everyone to see payment of taxes as a responsibility through which they are being part of fabric of our country and contributing towards the common good. On that note, Honorable Chair, GRA Board, Management and staff are once again grateful to the National Assembly for the support in passing the necessary revenue laws and amendments meant to improve the effectiveness of tax administration. We are indeed happy to maintain this collaboration for increased economic growth and development of our country, the Gambia. On this note, Honorable Chair, and with your permission, I'd like to invite the Acting Commissioner General of GRA to make this statement. Thank you all for your kind attention.
You want me to use the mic?
Yeah, you should.
Okay. Okay. Good afternoon once again. Chairperson of Fpac, honorable members of Fpac, subject matter specialists, our GRA board chair and board members here present, our external auditors, GRA senior management here present. Chairperson, I'll try to accommodate your request. I have a long speech, but I'll try to condense this to bring the key highlights of the speech that I have that was prepared for this occasion. So I want to say Assalamu alaikum to all of you. We are here in your midst today on behalf of GRA management and staff. As the chairman of the GRA board alluded to present the GRA 2020 annual activity report and financial statements to this august body. At this point, it is important to state that the financial statements we are presenting today is based on the subventions received to run the affairs of the authority, not the annual revenues that we collect. Those are part of the financial statements presented by central government on behalf of government by the Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs. Honorable members, chairperson and honorable members, GRA as a semi-autonomous body is mandated to administer the revenue laws of the Gambia by assessing, collecting and accounting for all revenues due to the government in a fair and transparent manner, whilst providing an effective system for tax compliance. The establishment of the authority, just to remind this body, was based on reforms which we are undertaking in the early 2000s, but came into effect in 2007 when we started our operations. It was mainly to bring the key revenue collecting agencies responsible for domestic taxes and the international trade together under one roof. And basically, the whole idea was meant to enhance efficiency in tax administration and reduce the compliance burden on taxpayers. The oversight responsibility, in terms of, providing direction to the authorities repose on the board of directors. And I'm glad to say that, they have a strong representation in this room today. To ensure that it provides a clear and consistent policy direction to the authority, the GRA board meets at least once every month, and at the level of the board subcommittees are also established for the staff and establishment and the finance, audit, and risk management committees to support it in discharging its functions effectively and efficiently. The day-to-day running of the authority is the responsibility of the Commissioner General, who is assisted in this role by the heads of department. most of whom are present here. The year 2020 marked the beginning of the implementation of our current strategic plan, which is the fourth in a row. That is the 2020 to 2024 strategic plan, which is anchored on these key pillars: maximizing revenue collection, optimizing client service delivery for improved customer relation and corporate image, consolidating the human resources and administration gains to enhance staff competencies and productivity, transforming our business processes and procedures, using mainly ICT, tools to drive this efficiency, and strengthening oversight mechanisms through monitoring and evaluation programs. The authority was quite optimistic and poised to consolidate gains in terms of revenue collection registered in the previous corporate strategic plan. Unfortunately, the advent of COVID-19, which is one of the most disruptive health emergencies the world has ever witnessed, posed significant challenges to GRA in terms of our revenue mobilization efforts. This is because the pandemic resulted in closure of land borders, airspace, downsizing of government operations, abrupt closure of the hotels and hospitality industry, ban in re-export, and general drop in demand for goods and services, which created undue pressure as far as our efforts we are concerned at the time to mobilize the much needed revenues for government. Notwithstanding, the authority, in a bid to deliver its mandate, leverage on the strategic planning aspect in terms of institutional strengthening, provision of mechanism for the efficient allocation of limited resources, as well as the evaluation of performance against expected outcome. Now I will dwell on the key summaries in terms of highlights in the report, that contain our activities for 2020, which I believe is already available for distribution now. So now I start with our key focus of our mandate, that is revenue mobilization. Despite the challenges posed by COVID-19 in 2020, the authority was able to meet its revenue target for the year. Overall, total revenues mobilized by GRA in 2020 amounted to $11.8 billion, which exceeded the annual target for that year, which amounted to $10.1 billion. So in summary, $11.8 billion was collected against a target of $10.1 billion, giving an excess collection over the target of $1.7 billion, which translated into a year-on-year growth of 17% relative to 2019. And in terms of the actual year-on-year, growth, we registered a 7.3% growth. But let me just get back to the earlier statement I made to correct that error, and that is the 17% is the percentage over and above the annual target which was set. Now coming to the year-on-year, that is comparing 2019 and 2020 in terms of growth in our annual revenues. Our revenues grew by 7.3% despite 2020 being a year that was when we had a lot of pressures relating to the COVID, and that amounted to, in absolute terms, 803.4 million collected over and above the collection of the previous year. So in other words, we are able to grow our revenues despite the challenges posed by COVID. In terms of now looking at this in terms of the contributions based on our operational departments, that is the International Trade Department and also the Domestic Taxes Department responsible for mobilizing the internal taxes. Now in 2020, the collection ratio was 57:43. 57% of our collections was accounted for by international trade revenues and 43% came from domestic taxes. This ratio suggests that any planned expansion in domestic revenues in the short term will depend on the buoyancy of imports. And also you will agree with me that this is a country that is heavily import dependent, and most of the goods that are traded in this country are goods that are imported. So the buoyancy of the international trade is very important. However, these ratios also indicate the volatility in terms of high dependence on international trade receipts. And that is not, out of context, considering the fact that, the contribution of the international trade is 57%. So any volatility in that area will seriously affect, our revenues in terms of overall position. And we have also, taken cognizance of the impact of policy shifts as far as our revenues are concerned. You will agree with me that we also belong to some to sub-regional and regional bodies such as the ECOWAS and the African Union. So at the level of ECOWAS, we have this ETLS, that is the ECOWAS Trade Liberalization Scheme. All these, are policies, that Gambia government has subscribed to, and we have signed these protocols, which means that, goods originating from West Africa that are qualified under the ETLS regime will enter, the Gambia duty-free. And the same goes for the international, the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, which is also subscribed to by the government of the Gambia. So that is also now extending it beyond West Africa to a continent-wide issue, so that those, companies that qualify, or those imports that qualify under these regimes will enter the country duty-free. So given the heavy dependence on international trade and all these protocols that we have signed, so it's an indication that we need to now look more inwards in terms of, enhancing our revenue collection capacity. Now, in terms of revenue performance by the operational departments, we start with customs. In 2020, customs total revenues amounted to 6.7 billion. And this represented, a 12%, above, the target which was set for the year. And in absolute terms, the Department of Customs and Excise collected 721.5 million above the target which was set. So in terms of year-on-year growth compared to 2019, the department was able to grow its revenues by 9%, amounting to about 571 million. That is revenues growing from 6.2 billion in 2019 to 6.7 billion in 2020. Now, similarly for the domestic taxes department, the total amount collected was 5.1 billion, and this resulted to a 25% above the target which was set, and close to $1 billion was collected above the target. That is 997.7 million was collected against the target which was set for the year. And in terms of year-on-year growth, the revenues, the domestic tax revenues grew by about 5%, growing from 8.8 billion to 5.1 billion. In absolute terms, additional revenues of 232.5 million. Now, comparatively, the year 2020 started as anticipated with a strong first quarter. I don't need to dwell more on that. I have already given the summaries in terms of performance. So I have already given you an idea about how we fared relative to the target and also in terms of year-on-year growth. So I will just move to other issues. So just to reiterate that despite the fact that, we've been able to register this level of performance, I had already, alluded to challenges such as the ban in re-export trade, border closures, downsizing of, staff, all these things, and also the closure of the hotels. All these things impacted on the economy and by extension also impacted on our revenue collection capacity. The performance of the authority during the year, despite the challenges of COVID, was boosted by the revision of custom indicative values. We looked at our values again and closed all gaps that we thought, needed to be closed at the time. Strong performance of oil receipts. By oil, we mean the petroleum products. Under the intervention of government, through NGOs, philanthropists, and private individuals, and we saw during the COVID time, a huge importation of food items, to assist the population. That also, provided some kind of respite. In terms of domestic revenues, the main contributor has been VAT and excise telecoms, and this mainly came from the telecoms. COVID was undesirable on one part, but there were sectors that also, grew out of, the COVID challenges. And telecoms was a case in point. When a lot of the communication was virtual, there was a lot of use of data and all these kind of things. So the telecoms revenues grew tremendously. And that gave us some kind of respite in terms of restoring stability in our revenues. The revenue collecting system continues to receive utmost attention of the GRA board and management to ensure that, the system remains efficient and effective. Now, the average revenue growth for the period 2007 to 2020, was 11%. And the same, percentage goes for the two operational departments. Average annual revenue, on average, our revenues were growing at a rate of 11.4%. Aside from attainment of revenue objective, the GRA in 2020 continued to build its institutional capacity through the training of staff, improvement in our processes and procedures by re-engineering them and modernizing our HR strategies. In the area of taxpayer services also, we continued to be very strong in terms of the provision of information, sensitization, and education for the taxpaying population and the population, in general, to sensitize them more about the revenue laws so that, we are able to achieve a high level of compliance. As the focal revenue collecting agency, the authority is the main contributor to the financing of public expenditure. That is no secret to anyone. This is a tax-based economy, so we expect the public finances to come mainly from taxation. Thus, the authority also, continues to leverage on ICT solutions, and that led to, our upgrading of the Asikuda Plus to Asikuda Wall. Then it was something in the making, and of course, that project was also heavily impacted by COVID in the sense that we missed some of the timelines for implementation. But thank God, as I'm speaking today, this system the project implementation cycle is complete and deployments are done. And equally with the support of the World Bank, we are also upgrading our GAM TaxNet, which is the current system used for domestic tax collection, into an integrated tax administration system, which is also going to be web-enabled. This is just to, give you an idea about, how much we have embraced, technology, and we think, the business of taxation for now and for the future can only thrive based on, IT solutions. Furthermore, management will continue to invest in our human capital, development, and that is all the more the reason why we continue to, open all kinds of training opportunities on the job, academic and professional, to our staff to enhance their productivity and capabilities. The economic policies of the country and the stable political environment provide hope for the expansion of the revenue base, and we look forward to a more favorable environment in which, we can thrive, our business can thrive in terms of revenue mobilization. We also continue to leverage on the support of the development partners who are actively involved in the work of GRA, IMF, World Bank, African Development Bank, ECOWAS, and a host of them. They continue to lend support in different ways, particularly in terms of enhancing our capacities. Now, I also need to reflect on some revenue measures which we are implemented in 2020, and these were also incorporated in the budget speech. So just to give you a gist of what those measures were, the custom processing fee charge at 1.5%. So it used to be 1% and then increased to 1.5%. The ECOWAS levy, reduced to 0.5%. That used to be 1.5%, but it came down to 0.5% for 2020 financial year. And now in terms of tax exemption for diplomats, granted to only internationally accredited missions in the Gambia and government officials returning from diplomatic postings from Gambian missions abroad, according to the Foreign Service Rules of 2001. So among the revenue measures was to increase the fee payable for the duty waiver forms for diplomatic missions from 1,000 to 2,000. Returning diplomats also, their duty waiver forms increased from 1,000 to 2,500. Government projects increased from 1,500 to 5,000. NGOs, religious institutions also increased from 1,000 to 5,000. These are just fees they pay to acquire the forms for duty exemptions. And in terms of those that are specific to our revenues also, the specific excise tax on cigarettes was increased from $20 per pack in 2019 to $25 per pack of cigarette in 2020. The environmental tax on cigarettes also was increased from $2.66 buttons per pack in 2019 to $2.93 buttons per pack in 2020. Excise tax on other tobacco products was also increased from $330 per kilogram in 2019 to $360 per kilogram in 2020. And environmental tax on other tobacco products increased from $165 per kilogram in 2019 to $175 per kilogram in 2020. It may interest you to know that we are also in close, collaboration and cooperation with the Ministry of Health in terms of, using fiscal policies to address the challenges of, consumption of tobacco products. So these measures are not only for revenues, but they are also to register health gains. Now, in terms of taxpayer services, I'll just mention it in passing. We are very active in this. Some of you maybe are following our programs on West Coast, where we also, have a very active program going on. We also have engagements with almost all the community radios in the country. We are also actively putting out, advertisements and other sensitization materials to educate our taxpayers. And we also have printed materials that we can share with our educated taxpayer population. So now ICT reforms, I have mentioned this, the Asikuta Wall and basically GAM TaxNet. Like I've said, in the interest of time, I will not read the speech the way it was prepared. I'll just be moving. Now, in terms of financial management and control, we continue to believe that, strengthening our internal controls is very important. And that is why we continue to strengthen our internal audit department to ensure that, routine audits are done and our accounts are also properly audited prior to external auditors coming in. Our board is also quite keen in ensuring that, internal controls are respected, and that is all the more the reason why the board, continues to ask for regular updates relating to internal controls and strengthening of governance within GRA. Now we also have been working closely with the Accountant General's Department in terms of the implementation of Treasury Single Account, which is basically to create the possibility of consolidated view of cash resources. And this is part of the government-wide reforms, and as stakeholders, we are also actively involved. Now, in terms of the use of commercial banks, in GRA, we believe that, the reduction of the cost of compliance is very important, because parting with money is one of the most difficult endeavors any individual or enterprise can make. So that is why we believe that let them pay the rightful taxes whilst we try to reduce the cost of compliance as much as possible. I'm sure by the time my Director of Finance comes in, maybe he will talk about that. Today, over 80% of the revenues we mobilize, they don't involve any GRA, kind of involvement, because most of them are either routed through the RTGS, or we have placed our systems, that is tax collection IT systems, in MOU banks, and we have signed these MOUs with most of the banks, so taxpayers can just get to all these banks, pay and get receipted without coming to any GRA office. So that is something we have done. In 2020 also we started engagements with GT Bank and EcoBank, but with EcoBank we have progressed so that we can also access their mobile online platforms for particularly the small and micro taxpayers to use for the payment of taxes. So the future is definitely free hands as far as GRA is concerned, and taxpayers enjoying not only self-assessment, but they will also pay without directly interacting with GRA staff. Now, the implementation of the 2020 to 2024 strategic plan is in high gear. So, and most of these activities we have talked about, including the ICT reforms, are anchored on this strategic plan, and it continues to be, provide direction in terms of our activity-based budgeting is all informed by this, our strategic plan, and all engagements with, development partners are also, are centered around the strategic plan. On security matters, it should be of interest for you to know that we are not only a revenue collection agent, but we are also into security matters, particularly when it comes to controlling the importation of prohibited and restricted imports, which might pose danger to the population of this country. So we continue also to collaborate closely with the security agents in this country, be it the army, the police, and the others, in terms of ensuring that, national security is also, provided for the citizenry. In terms of enterprise risk management, we continue to embrace risk management in all the things that we do, and that is why we have created a department wholly responsible for this particular function. So, and our reforms are in progress. The rest of it you can find in the report that we have circulated. In terms of staffing and training, in 2020, the total number of staff was 796 staff, and the gender ratio, gender composition was 548 males to 248 females. In terms of ratio, is 69:31 males to females. So in terms of age breakdowns, 114 of our staff, that is 14%, we are within the age bracket 18 to 29 years in 2020. 498 staff, or about 63%, we are within the age bracket 30 to 49 years. And 182 of the staff, about 23%, we are within the age bracket 50 to 60 years. Now, in terms of staff training, training remain one of the strongest pillars of GRA successes since 2017. The authority is both able to attract highly trained staff, and we continue to invest in the continuous human development, capital development of our staff. Due to the COVID-19 situation, of course, there were a lot of restrictions in terms of overseas training, but that has not stopped us in terms of making sure that our staff continue to receive training in all areas. And in 2020, out of our staff, 62 had masters, ACCA, that is graduate, postgraduate, degrees, that is representing 21%. 83 of our staff, about 28%, already had their undergraduate degrees, and the rest, about 50%, held diplomas or other qualifications. In terms of institutional reforms, a few changes we did. During the year, the authority established a new unit called the Internal Affairs Unit. This is also part of our reforms. We believe that we collect, revenues on behalf of the state. So the issue of public confidence and image of the authority is very important. So this unit was created to deal with all kinds of integrity matters. Where staff are found wanting, so that we continue to protect the image of the authority and ensure that we transparently collect and account for all revenues that are due to government. We also move our procurement unit from the Finance and Accounting Department to the Office of the Commissioner General, based on the GPPA Act 2018 and Regulation 2019. Our legal department continues to be very active, particularly in terms of assisting us in all our legal work, and they were able to develop, a board of directors manual, bills. We are actively engaged in the, drafting of bills, the licensing of bonded warehouses and manufacturers of exercisable goods, licensing of cigarette importers, issuance of licenses, but above all, they've been very involved in litigation to ensure that we track, defaulting taxpayers or taxpayers who do not want to fall in line as far as compliance is concerned. We've been, using our legal department effectively to handle these matters at the level of the courts. And thank God, we can say that, that has really paid dividends, in terms of, improving the level of compliance, particularly for the state-owned enterprises. And in terms of our public affairs and international cooperation, we continue to work hard in terms of our interaction with the public here and, outside. Now, I cannot conclude my speech without talking about challenges. Of course, the COVID-19 is no secret. I can just mention it in passing. The other thing has to do with, the large informal sector in this country. You all know that, they are the hard to reach and hard to tax population, and this is an economy where there is a lot of informality, but we are also doing our utmost best. One of the components of the ITAS is to bring these mobile solutions and those kind of, tools to really, bring this informal sector to the forefront. The other thing has to do with the closures of the hotels, and the hotels, their contribution to our revenues is huge, and a lot of them, did not operate, fully in 2020. And the others have to do with, of course, resources are never enough. We are resourced, but we still feel that, there is still room for improvement in terms of resourcing. So, okay, so that said, so I want to thank you for the opportunity you have given us to appear before you. And at this stage, I will invite our Director of Finance to pick up on the financial statements with your kind permission.
Thank you. At the end of the day, you can provide us the copy of that executive summary, as well as the introductory statement made by the chairperson. Thank you. The mic on?
I thought it was on, sorry.
Okay, okay.
I hope you heard me already, but basically, good afternoon to the chairperson and members of this August body, and greetings to all staff that are here, both from the National Assembly and from us GRA. I want to stand on existing protocols, knowing that in the interest of time, this cannot be a lengthy presentation. I'll do my best to just give you the key highlights. To start off with, the financial statement is a responsibility of the Board of Directors under the GRA Act. And to this extent, the report gives detailed information in terms of this responsibility, which covers ensuring that the accounts, the financial statements are prepared with a true and fair view of its affairs for the period we are looking at, which is 2020, and also basically that they are prepared under generally accepted accounting principles, and makes mention or at least the key details in terms of the need to have suitable accounting policies and that they are applied consistently, and that this should be, all judgments and estimates should be based on reasonable components and on prudence, as well as the application of the necessary accounting standards. Of course, GRA as a going concern is important that the accounts are prepared on the basis that it is expected to operate in continuity. So beyond that, also it states the principal activities of the GRA, which I think we all know. I can sum up by just saying revenue collection in a fair and transparent manner, and as my DCG said, with as minimum cost possible for the taxpayers. So the report goes on to basically give further details on these responsibilities and principal activities of the GRA, as I said, and to tail off also gives details in terms of the property, plant, and equipment that we have. This one we have a separate page that we report on it, and it also states our auditors, who at this stage for 2020, the fourth year is Augustus Prom. So then you have a part of the report which is from page 9 to page 11, basically is the independent auditor's report. And for the purpose of this very independence, I would not go into that. It is the auditor who should cover this part. It is one of my favorite parts because it tells whether we have a clean bill of health.
Auditor will handle that.
Yes.
What is for the auditor, you reserve that for the auditor.
Exactly, yes. So
you go straight to the financial statement.
yes.
Yeah.
So in terms of now the financial statements, the key statements, which are the four primary statements, starting off with the statement of financial performance. Which
Can you direct us to the...
okay, page 12.
12, okay.
Sorry, I forgot that now you have the document. So basically, this details out in summary form the revenues for the year in terms of what we utilize to operate in terms of our revenue collection mandate. And overall, we had almost 536 million, sorry, and which is a growth of about 5% from the previous year. And we utilize that in terms of broad categories of expenditure, administration costs, personnel costs, operational costs, finance costs, audit fees, and depreciation. And overall, this was 454 million, which was just about 3.8% below that of last year. Of course, this is, as the DCG explained, this was a COVID year, so these expense lines are not under the normal expenditure lines in terms of it being a COVID year. So some of the expenditure was affected by COVID. And broadly, that meant also we had an operational surplus of 81 million. Of that also we had additional income, other income. The details of some of these would be further down, so I'm just touching on them in summary. So that was about almost 5 million. So overall we had a surplus of just in excess of 86 million as a surplus. So in terms of our statement of financial position, perhaps before I mention that, maybe just to say, but I think you have already had with respect to various elements that the DCG mentioned in terms of training, in terms of IT expenditure, in terms of all those things that we needed to do to operate. All of those are embedded in the costs that we outlined here. Moving to the financial performance, financial statements, the second statement talks about the financial position. This is basically the assets and the liabilities and equity or reserves as at 31st December 2020. And as at that point, in terms of broad categories, what we call the non-current assets, fixed assets, in other words, property, plant, and equipment grew from the previous year about 589 million. We grew to about 638 million. And also basically roughly about 8% growth. For current assets, overall it was 152 million, almost 153, which also grew from the previous year, principally due to cash balances increasing by also about almost 42% to 152 million. The capital and reserves, the first component is largely unchanged simply because it is as a result of the merging of customs and domestic taxes when GRA came into inception. That was 434 million, which was basically the valuation of the asset position of the GRA. And since then, we have had surpluses in the main, up to a point where the accumulated surplus is almost 354 million. Lastly, the liabilities, trade and other payables, we have a small component there of 17 million, which is basically mostly elements of vouchers that were posted and not yet settled by the end of the year. What is important here from a liquidity point of view is that our current assets, in other words, our cash balances, far outweigh what we were owing. So there's no risk in terms of liquidity there. So for the equity position on page 14, it basically gives a summary of the movement from the previous year to current year. And the movement simply is the surplus for the year of 86 million. That's the overall movement from last year to this year. I mean 2019 to 2020. We are used to saying this year and last year as accountants when we look at some of these, but 2019 to 2020. So then you have the statement of cash flows, the last of the major statements. This is basically partly a reconciliation of the movement in terms of the surplus we are reporting to the end of year cash balance that we have. But it is also there to also highlight any issues of cash flow we may have to operate. And basically that means starting with the operating cash flows, the surplus that we have, this is adjusted for non-cash items, which is the depreciation. So that it means that the operating surplus in 2020 was 114 million. And with that movement in terms of what has improved the cash flow, also we had additional 1.6 and 8.3, which are movements in these asset and liability categories. So overall, it means that GRA generated 124 million in terms of cash, additional cash from operations. And we utilized that cash to invest in capital activities as well. So in terms of our property, plant and equipment, overall we spent about 83 million. This is basically on fixed assets such as furniture, motor vehicles, and buildings. And we had also small earnings in terms of return on investment, basically fixed deposit accounts. We earn almost 5 million in terms of interest income. So this works back to show why we ended up with a cash balance of 88 million. So that basically covers the primary statements, but also important part of the accounts are the notes, which I believe you will probably just peruse, but it highlights the various policies that are also part of the consideration in doing these financial statements, going from accounting policies to revenue recognition, and a table highlighting in terms of our fixed assets. Because we are doing accruals accounting, it means that all expenditure on fixed assets, the cost is spread over the lifetime of the asset. So each year we take a portion of that cost and basically charge it to the income statement to recognize it as expenses. And the table highlights basically the percentages that we apply, which translate to years. So for buildings, we write off over 40 years. Motor vehicles, also about 6 years. Plant and machinery equipment, just over 3 years, and so on. So that detail is there. And of other importance also, we highlight also our pension scheme, where staff are paid for their pensions. The authority contributes 15% to Social Security for the Federated Pension Scheme, and staff benefit from that upon retirement. Then You have also further details basically in the notes. You find one of the key ones in terms of revenue.
We may leave the notes aspect of it.
We can, okay,
yeah.
okay. So then basically if that's gonna be the case, maybe all I will say there is that the notes add further substance to the summary reports.
Okay.
So if at all you want to get further details, you refer to the notes.
Okay.
So basically that covers the presentation then.
Okay. Can we now invite the external auditor? The external auditor may only provide the audit opinions, then the key highlights of the management letter. Okay. You may proceed. You also guide us through the pages. Where is the other one?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
No, no.
Thank you, Honorable. Honorable Chair, honorable members of the Fpac, subject matter specialists, Chairman, Chairperson, Board of Directors and Management of Gambia Revenue Authority. On behalf of Augustus Prom Audit Tax and Advisory, I hereby present to you Independent Auditor's Report to the board members of the Gambia Revenue Authority, and it reads as follows. Auditor's Opinion. Honorable Chairman, we have audited the accompanying financial statements of Gambia Revenue Authority set out on pages 12 to 24, which comprises of the financial performance, statement of financial position, statement of changes in equity, statement of cash flows, and notes to the financial statements, including summary of significant accounting policies applicable to the authority. Honorable Chair, in our opinion, the financial statements give a true and fair view of the financial position of the authority as at 31st December 2020, and of its financial performance and its cash flows for the year then ended, in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles and in line with the requirements of the GRA Act 2004, in bracket amended 2010. Below that paragraph, we have the basis of the opinion. Honorable Chair, other matters paragraph, other information paragraph, and we have the responsibilities of directors for the financial statements. I don't know if I should go through that because that is very important to us as auditors, to stress the responsibilities of management and directors in relation to the financial statement. With your permission, may I proceed?
Yeah, you can go to the management letter now.
Excellent. Honorable Chair, may I refer you to page number 4 of the management letter report for the year ending 31st December 2020. Page number 4.
Okay. You may proceed.
And it reads, point number 1, manual asset register. The grading is on a grade 2. 1.1 observation. Upon our review on the monitoring of authorities' assets, we noted that authorities' asset management module is yet to be set up in the EPICO 10 accounting system for the period under review. That is the IFMIS. It was further noted that the authority operates and maintains a manual non-current asset register using Excel, Microsoft Excel. 1.2 implication. Managing maintaining an asset register in Excel, considering the high number of assets owned by the authority, exposes management to a risk of errors occurring in which it could go unnoticed, undetected, further exposing the authority to misstated net book values on the assets. 1.3 recommendation. Management should ensure the asset module in the accounting system is utilized, which will automate the asset management of the authority, further improving on the management and monitoring of the assets of the authority. Followed by management response.
You may leave that one.
Excellent.
Yeah, the response, that's what.
Point number 2, Honorable Chair.
Yeah.
On
Page 6 here.
on page 6, on fixed deposit investment. That is grade 1. 2.1 observation. As at 31st December 2020, we noted a total of GMD 83.444 million as fixed deposit investment by the authority as follows. The detail is on the table below. The total is 83,444,379 dollars has been invested. Upon our review on the investment process, we requested for evidence of investment appraisal to ensure the offers accepted from the banks is favorable compared to other offers in the money market. But there was no evidence provided to ascertain if appraisal process was conducted. Upon discussion with management, it was confirmed that the process was done verbally and not documented. 2.2 implication. Assessment and reviews on the bank offers done verbally and not documented means that we were unable to ascertain that an appraisal was conducted on various offers, which is key in the investment decision. Is making process. That would have been making process. 2.3 recommendation. We are recommending that management should ensure investment appraisal process is documented and approved going forward. Followed by management response. Point number 3 on staff loans, and that is grade 1. 3.1 is observation. The following issues were noted upon our review on the staff loans. We have a building loan. During the audit exercise, it came to our attention that the following building loan beneficiary did not provide title deed and mortgage document as stipulated in the loan policy. That is in bracket 15 conditions before a loan disbursement. We have another one in bracket. The successful applicant must A, surrender his or her title deeds to the property to the chairperson of the committee, which shall be kept in the custody of the authority until the loan is repaid in full. B, mortgage the property to the authority in the shortest time possible. The detail is below. I move on to B, staff loan provisioning. We requested for the authority staff loan provisioning policy for further review to ascertain the basis of provisioning and to ensure consistency on the annual provision on staff loan treatment, but this was not provided for our review. 3.2 implication. A, staff beneficiaries receiving building loans without providing title deeds and mortgage documents as stipulated in the building loan policy is not in line with the policy of the authority. B, staff loan provisioning. A staff loan provision policy not maintained exposes the authority, leads to inconsistency, and further exposes the authority to a risk of over over or under provisioning, which can mistake the staff loan balances reported in the financial statement. 3.3 Recommendation. Management should ensure there is full compliance with the approved loan policies of the authority. Staff loan provisioning should be developed and approved by the board to ensure consistency in the treatment. Management response. Point number 4 on human resource management, and that is on grade 2. 4.1 Observation. The following was noted during our review on the human resource management of the authority. A. Staff leave outstanding. Upon our review on the staff leave outstanding as at 31st December 2020, we noted instances of staff having outstanding leave due in the range of 92 days to 166 days as follows. The detail is below, including staff number and the number of leave days outstanding. B. Staff medical scheme. Upon our test of control, we noted the authority operates a staff medical scheme database, in bracket Harris, that registered every staff beneficiary, monitor, and report on the scheme. During the discussion, it was confirmed that the limit is 30,000 balances GMD for every staff beneficiary. We noted the following staff exceeding the threshold based on our sample. The detail is below, card numbers, and the amount that has been exceeded. C. Staff leavers account not deactivated from the medical scheme. We noted the following staff leavers in which the staff medical scheme accounts were not deactivated upon their separation from the authority. Detail is given below, employee number, and the position held at the time. 4.2 Implication. A. Staff leave outstanding. Members of staff leaving a high amount of leave areas ranging from 92 to 166 working days make us question the operational structure in place, causing staff not being able to go on their annual leave. Furthermore, it could have an impact on the performance due to fatigue. Furthermore, in the event management has to terminate a staff with long outstanding leave days, it will lead to negative financial implications due to compliance with the labor laws of the Gambia. B. Medical scheme. Staff medical scheme. Staff exceeding the limit exposes the authority to financial losses in terms of payment of excess medical bills, which defeat the purpose of setting a threshold for employees. Staff leavers not activated from the medical scheme. Staff leavers not deactivated from the system exposes the authority to paying medical bills for employees that are no longer in the service of the authority. Implication. 4.3 Management should ensure that staff with long outstanding leave areas proceed on leave. Furthermore, we recommend that management should review the threshold set and take a position in the event of staff exceeding the threshold. All employees that are no longer in the service of the authorities should be deactivated. Governance on page 13 on point number 5 is grade 2. 5.2 Observation. During our oversight compliance reviews, we noted the following. A. GRA Finance and Audit Committee meeting minutes. We noted GRA Finance and Audit Committee meets on a monthly basis during the year. Over our review on the committee meeting minutes, we noted minutes were not signed by the chairperson and the secretary to the committee. B. GRA committees meeting minutes not provided. During the course of the audit exercise, we requested for the meeting minutes in respect of the following GRA subcommittees, but the minutes were not provided for our review. We have the Loans Committee, Budget Committee, Reforms and Modernization Committee, Clearing Agent Committee. 5.2 implication. Providing us with meeting minutes which were not signed means that we were unable to ascertain if that was the final minutes that was deliberated on by the committee. Furthermore, we are unable to place reliance on the documents because there was no signature approving the minutes. With regards to committee meeting minutes, we were unable to ascertain as to whether the GRA list of committees are compliant with their respective terms of reference for the year. 5.3 recommendation. Management should ensure meeting minutes of the Finance and Audit Committee in bracket FAC are signed by the Secretary and approved by the Chairman. We further recommend that GRA list of committees should document their meetings and signed by the authorized official. Fuel management. Point number 6. Grade 2. 6.1 observation. During our test of details on fuel pockets, we noted the following fuel pockets were not supported with delivery notes. The table is below, comprising of the date, the reference number of the transaction, description, amount in GMD, and the audit observation. They are all stated below. 6.2 implication. Delivery notes not provided implies an incomplete document trail to trace the transaction from payment to the actual fare received by the authority. 6.3 we recommend that management should ensure that delivery notes are obtained at all times after the purchase of fuel in line with recommended practices. Point number 7, controls on stationary pockets. That is grade 2. 7.1 observation. During our review on the inventory system in place on stationary pockets, we noted manual Excel system is unable to give historical balances of any stock item at a particular historical date. 7.2 implication. Maintaining an inventory system which is unable to give historical balances on stock items create limitation in tracing pockets against the actual stock for reconciliation purposes. The limitation on the system exposes management to a risk of irregularities occurring without the items acquired, leading to financial losses to the authority. 7.3 recommendation. Management should further improve on the inventory system limitation to ensure historical data from the system can be maintained for adequate reviews and monitoring purpose and monitoring. Point number 8, that is expenditure review / single sourcing, and that is grade 2. Observation is 8.1. We noted the following transaction in which contracts and evidence of single sourcing approval. The single source approvals were not provided for our review. The detail is below. The table is below, comprising of the date, details, reference, payee, and the amount in Gambian dollars. And 8.2 implication. Single source approvals not provided for our review cast doubt as to whether management has complied with GPPA procurement regulations with regards to single sourcing. 8.3 management should ensure contracts and approval for single sourcing are made available for audit to ensure management is compliant with GPPA regulations. Chairman, on page 18 comprises of the previous review on the implementation of previous period audit findings. With your permission, should I go for?
Yeah, you can.
Please, thank you. We start on page number 9. We have fixed assets. Audit observation, fixed assets without description, location, or references. During our review of fixed asset balances, We noted there were some assets in the fixed asset register for which details were not completely recorded. These are assets without descriptions. Some does not have location without, while others have no references. This was reported on 31st December 2019. Current status not implemented as at 31st December 2020. Auditors remark, this has not been addressed by management. Following paragraph relates to physical verification. During our physical verification exercise of the authority's fixed asset, we noted that a motorcycle with registration number MC GRA 38 with a net book value of GMD 180,000 was stolen during the period under review. However, the incident has been reported, but the asset still appeared in the authority's fixed asset register. Year reported 31st March 2019. Current status implemented. Auditors remark this has been addressed by management. Honorable Chair, performance appraisal. During our audit, samples of authorities' employees were selected to review the annual performance evaluation appraisal. We could not obtain evidence of staff annual performance evaluation for the period under review. Year reported 31st March 2019. Current status currently being implemented. Auditors remark this is currently being addressed by management. The end of the report, Honorable Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can you give us an update on the state of the auditing of the accounts of the 2021?
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. I can confirm to you today that the audit field work is in progress. As I'm sitting here, I have my team members doing the field work. Once I'm done, I will join them. I also heard you mention that as to whether the 2021 audit could be completed and submitted before the end of this section, which you stated on the 11th November 2022. Responding to that, considering the timing limitation for the field work and the finalization process, I would suggest that you extend. I will not be able to deliver the final signed audited copies as at 11th November 2022, considering that the volume of transaction 1 and 2 finalization also is time consuming. I would suggest that this date we could not deliver the signed audited financial statements. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the response. Thank you very much. I think this has ended the presentation of the 2020 reports of ERA. As indicated in our calendar, you are to be available tomorrow by 10 a.m. for the consideration of the said reports being just presented. We've taken note of the suggestion of the external auditor, considering the workload and against the time we have for this October-November session. There the committee will take decision and subsequently communicate to you to that effect. On that note, we thank you so much for your cooperation. By doing so, providing the necessary reports, even though with these rearrangements, you endeavor to get all the extra copies available to the new members. We thank you for that cooperation. Our specials will go through the documents as presented, and then tomorrow by 10 a.m., by the grace of Allah, will be here for the consideration. Honorable colleagues, this has now brought us to the end of the presentation of GRA. Do you have anything to say before we release them until tomorrow? In the absence of no other issue, can somebody move that we adjourn the sitting until 2:30, not for GRA, another institution? Those in favor, please say aye, and those not in favor, please say no. Therefore, the sitting for today is adjourned until 2:30. I thank you all.